Thank you all for coming, and thank you for the change of mindset in eating pizza rather than festive nibbles. I'm sure there was a struggle for many of you, and the air of excitement when the waft of the pizza smell came out was incredible. So anyway, thank you for being here. I've just been reminded that officially we're not supposed to eat or drink in here, so you could make sure when you do go, if you take the stuff you brought down with you, that'd be great. But do, if you are enjoying a drink while you're here, that's a great thing. So thank you all for coming tonight. So here's our agenda for this evening. I'm going to be very quick because Rob and his team have lots to say. Here's the agenda for the evening. Mainly about skills crisis is what Rob and the team are here to talk about. We're going to have a quick Q&A after that. Then we've got coming soon, so lots of exciting things to announce as far as what Norfolk Construction Excellence are doing. And then there's the after parties. Those who have not had enough wine or pizza yet, we're going to the coaching office after this, as we usually do, to continue the event. So what I want to do is thank our two sponsors for this evening. Cannon Consulting, obviously, because Rob is part of that, and Richard Dutting, who sponsored the wine for this evening. So a big round of applause for them would be amazing. So just a quick reminder, Norfolk Constructing Excellence, who is it? The people on the screen here, ravishingly handsome bunch of people as we are the people who make these events happen. But more importantly, the people who are behind the group as a whole. This represents the logos, the dazzling graphic display that it is. All those people are now involved in Construction Excellence as corporate members. So good to see that group slightly growing, and excited to see how that develops through the year. So with that, I'm just going to simply hand over with a heading that says Skills Crisis: How do we solve the challenge of training and recruiting and retaining construction professionals in Norfolk? And then we're going to seamlessly switch between one PowerPoint presentation and another as Rob strides manfully towards the stage and I shuffle off. Oops, sorry. Trying not to preempt the next slide that's going to go next.
Evening all. So you're going to hear from several of us this evening talking about construction professionals and the route to membership. As we all know, construction has a problem. It's not just a Norfolk and Suffolk problem. Construction in the built environment needs talent. It needs it now. Every year we're hemorrhaging knowledge and we're not replacing it fast enough. Remember that construction accounts for almost 7% of our GDP and 10% of every job in the UK. But yet twice as many people leave construction as they do join construction, which is a shocking statistic. And in Norfolk and Suffolk, we're compounding the challenge that every other county faces. And you'll hear more about why during the course of this presentation. I'm delighted to be joined by a group of equally committed and passionate construction professionals, and we're working together to identify the problems and ultimately lead to the solution. And you'll hear a little bit about that this evening. And we're talking on behalf of all of you, not just our businesses, and I think it's an important thing to stress. Everyone here will have experienced some of the challenges that we're sharing with you this evening, and you'll all be doing something to improve the situation in terms of training and recruitment. But we're all doing something separately, and the main objective for this evening is to do something together. So this presentation is all about construction professionals, architects, engineers, building services engineers, surveyors, construction managers, project managers. We'll also hear about how sustainability will form a crucial part of the journey. We recognise that there are other professionals that work within construction and that touch construction, and we'll be expanding our discussions in the coming months to include this. We're also very aware that other organisations have identified the skills gap, and they're working very hard to improve the situation. And we will link with every other organisation in the area committed to skills in the coming months, so please bear with us. Delighted to be joined by such a wonderful bunch of driven and talented professionals who will share their wisdom with you all this evening. My name is Rob Panter. I'm a chartered civil engineer and chartered structural engineer, and I'm a fellow of both ICE and iStructE. And I'm incredibly passionate about helping young people through their professional journey. Steve Nash will discuss the professional pathway for building services engineers. Steve is Senior Building Services Engineer at Ingleton Wood and a member of SIPSI. Jareen Irwin will weave her way through the architecture pathway, explaining the various routes to membership. Jareen is Director at Chaplin & Farrant and a Chartered Architect. John Nelson will share the various professional routes available for surveyors and the pathway that exists, both in and out of Norfolk. John is a Director at RUA, and a fellow of RICS. Saul Humphrey will then share his views on sustainability and how this impacts on every professional role in construction, and importantly how Norfolk and Suffolk working together can offer something very different. Not only is Saul highly qualified with several professional bodies, he's also a passionate advocate for the built environment and particularly sustainability. And finally, Paul Cushing will introduce the role that R.G. Carter play in the construction education pathway, and he will be joined by Ed Carr and James Cork, who will share their journey, and they've recently qualified through their education route. And finally, we're going to share with you our vision for the future and our proposal for change and improvement and how we can all work together. So I'm going to start by providing a little bit of context to our discussions to provide some background and outline why the situation in Norfolk is considerably worse than elsewhere in the UK. We've all read about the challenge. The UK is in the midst of a monumental construction shortage, and across the board, from trades through to professionals. And I'll share with you a little story. At the start of my career, I worked at the City Engineers Department in St Giles House. Some of you of a certain vintage will remember that there was something called the City Engineers Department, where around about 80 construction professionals worked for the City Council. And we were a consultant for the city and looking after the city assets. And the decision was taken, well, that's not a particularly great idea, so gradually people moved to private sector or they retired, and the city engineers was never replaced. So 80 people with all of this knowledge about the local built environment left and were never replaced. And this is just one example of how a lack of future planning locally has contributed to our current situation. And there'll be many, many more examples in local authority and in private practice. But why is this? This is a little example. It's estimated that we have an annual shortfall of 20,000 engineers in the UK. 20,000 annually. It's huge. So the Norfolk challenge, if we accept that we had a skills shortage before COVID, it's been amplified because of COVID. So many construction professionals retired during the pandemic. They thought this was a logical point to stop work, enjoy their retirement, didn't really fancy digital working, Teams meetings, endless Teams meetings, and they much preferred the dynamic buzz of an office or the human interaction of a progress meeting. And I think we all know plenty of people that retired through the pandemic. So we lost even more knowledge. Now, you'll hear a lot about the education challenge in this presentation, about how Norfolk doesn't have an effective education pathway in construction. Well, if we continue as we are, we're just going to shrink the knowledge pool in Norfolk. We'll gradually dwindle, and our best young people will continue to leave Norfolk to be educated outside of Norfolk and maybe not return. If this continues and we don't do something about it, ultimately we will have insufficient skills, we'll end up outsourcing an awful lot of what we do, there'll be a lack of investment in education and construction, and we'll have diminishing knowledge. So we've got to do something about it now, and this is ultimately what we're here for. So the current opportunities in Norfolk. How does a young person navigate the often very complicated route to becoming a construction professional in our county? I'm sure many of you are similar to me. I've mentored many young people through the professional journey, civil and structural engineers over many years. The journey in Norfolk is more complicated than perhaps elsewhere. Why is this? Well, we'll come on to that in a bit more detail. T-levels have recently been launched. I'm delighted that City College are represented here this evening. T-levels have recently been launched and provide an excellent opportunity for young people with a vocational route into the industry. New qualification for 16 to 19-year-olds, and it applies to many different roles in construction. East Coast College also offer a T-level in construction. If any of you are interested in the T-level option for your business and how you can engage with young people, please speak with City College or East Coast College this evening. City College also offer HND qualifications down the bottom in civil engineering and construction management, and newer offer the BA in architecture, which Doreen will talk about. However, there is not the required academic offering in Norfolk for young people or anybody to gain the base to become chartered. there is not the academic pathway in Norfolk. Our young people need to leave Norfolk in order to become chartered. Degree apprentices are becoming very popular, and many of you will employ degree apprentices. But ultimately you'll send your staff outside of the area. At our business at Canham Consulting, we send our degree apprentices to either Anglia Ruskin or to Nottingham Trent University. And in fact, Will, one of our degree apprentices, is at Nottingham Trent. But what I'd say is that really the best use of their time, our time and resources of business, to send them outside of county, to travel 2.5, 3 hours once a week to go and study? Is there a better way of doing this locally? And what about the carbon impact of this? Not really a sustainable solution to send our people outside of county. So finally, and perhaps the most important thing, a young person studying at sixth form may be interested in construction. Maybe they'd like to become a building surveyor, a quantity surveyor, construction manager, maybe a civil engineer. If they want to go the traditional route, they will all leave Norfolk to study, and maybe they won't return. So, I'd like a few questions and show of hands, if we may. How many of you studied outside of Norfolk because there was not a suitable course in Norfolk? Pretty compelling. One for businesses, really. Do you send your people outside of Norfolk to train? How many of you send your people outside of Norfolk to train? Again, a reasonable spread of businesses. Would you prefer that your people were educated in Norfolk? Show of hands. This is all pretty... and here's a question. Do you feel that this is directly influencing the built environment in Norfolk? And finally, do you think this makes recruiting more difficult? Yeah, I think we're all on the same page, which is why we're all here. Now, there will be, just on the previous slide, there will be a survey monkey that we're going to send out to everybody because we need data. We need this information to be able to present it to our colleagues in the education sector to help us all to influence a bit of change here. So, educating the educators. It's one of the greatest challenges we have. I'm sure many of you have visited schools and colleges and you've spoken about the work that you do in your business. I've done quite a bit of this. And each time I'm amazed by the blank look on the faces of careers advisors and teachers when I talk about structural engineering, about civil engineering. I get more awareness, I think, from the students sometimes. And the comment is often, well, I thought the architect did that. I didn't know what an engineer did. I'm sure other engineers that do similar things have had the same response. But careers advisors have lots of professions that they've got to understand so that they can provide young people with the right advice. I would say that we're not providing careers advisors with the tools and the information and the knowledge so that they can advise their students. It's not the careers advisors' fault, it's our issue. We're not educating careers advisors in the way that we should. So a little example, my eldest son is in upper sixth and he's heading off to university to study construction management in September next year. He was given an online tool to ask about his interests and the subjects he studied, and from the information he gave, it came out with a list of, well, these are your possible courses and these are your possible career choices. Construction didn't feature, nothing. So then I thought it'd be really fun to transport myself back to like an 18-year-old Rob and...
Sorry, Rob.
Yeah, an 18-year-old Rob is a slightly worrying thing, as Paul will vouch for. So I put in my kind of A-levels and what I was interested in. Well, civil engineering didn't even make the top 100, okay? It wasn't there. But apparently I would have made a very good golf course designer. So I think it's on us. We've got to educate the educators on what we do and make construction professions a really cool career to go into. And this is a huge issue. It's not just a Norfolk issue, it's across the country. Jumping back to construction degrees. We don't offer construction degrees, the pathway in Norfolk, as I've mentioned. Across the UK, 65,000 students are studying architecture, building and planning. And the figure does not include engineering degrees because engineering includes so many different engineering subjects. I haven't included that because it would skew it. So architecture, building, planning, 65,000. So our fair share of that, based on the population of Norfolk, would be 879 students. That would be our fair share of construction students. Well, our estimated number with the students that are studying at Newer, and perhaps Ray can confirm this, is about 60 that are studying architecture at Newer. But you compare that to other cities, I'm comparing to Leeds, Newcastle, Nottingham, Reading and Sheffield, and you can see the numbers on there for yourself. Again, it doesn't include civil engineering or services engineering. So we are significantly lower. And Reading is an interesting example. Just over 22,000 students studying in Reading and just under 3,000 students studying architecture, building or planning. And this is all compounding to our recruitment challenge. So how are we supposed to, as employers, develop professionals of the future when we're not training professionals of the future? 36% of students stay in that area of university, the brain drain. It's a commonly kind of understood number, really. Some of this is healthy for young people to experience learning and working in a different city with different people. If we're not attracting young people from outside of the area to study in Norwich, we're just compounding our problem. We're all finding it difficult to recruit. It isn't a new problem, but it's more difficult now than it's ever been. Of course, we all love paying extortionate fees to recruitment consultants. I'm sorry if there's any recruiters in the room. Just a quick note on recruiting graduates. Universities love to link with employers. They love to link with industry. They have careers fairs, business engagement days. If you are keen to recruit a graduate, attend these university career days, get to know the university. You'll find there is available talent out there all over the UK. You do not need to pay a recruiter to recruit a graduate. Okay, there's lots of young people out there who would be more than happy to come to Norfolk. So our current position is this: we're hemorrhaging talent out of Norfolk. Young people leave Norfolk after further education. 36% will not return, and those who remain in Norfolk will be recycled. The average time a young person remains in a job now is about 2.5 years. And then they'll move on, often for more money. It just compounds the issue. Not only are we recycling people, but we're recycling knowledge in Norfolk. All we're doing is moving people around the county, moving that knowledge around. We grow our built environment locally by bringing fresh ideas in. And if we're not training and developing our own, then ultimately we're just recycling the same knowledge. The Building Safety Act, I'm sure you're all familiar, or at least read a little bit about the Building Safety Act. This is going to change the way that we design, build, maintain buildings. Whilst at the moment the focus is on tall buildings, it's only a matter of time until this is going to apply to every building. And one key aspect of the Building Safety Act is competence and how we achieve, maintain and demonstrate competence. This applies particularly to structural engineers. The Institution of Structural Engineers are working very hard with HSE and other organisations regarding the Building Safety Act and are pushing for the competence marker to be the chartered status. They're pushing for that, and I'm sure other professional bodies will as well. If we're not training our own professionals in Norfolk, we're going to find it harder to demonstrate competence. So we're liaising with our respective professional bodies and institutions, gaining information and learning about routes to membership. You can appreciate that across all of the professions it's quite a complex thing to understand. You're now going to hear more from my colleagues who are working with me to weave our way through this. One parallel with each of the professions and each of the institutions is the need for accredited courses to gain these professional qualifications. So, unfortunately, you've just got to bear with me just for a little bit longer because I'm going to talk about civil and structural engineering and then I'm going to be quiet for a bit. Before I do that, I will just talk about us as a business just for 2 minutes, just so you understand a little bit about the Canon Consulting approach to this. Every business here will invest time and money in developing young people for the future. we've all recognised the challenge. At Canham Consulting, we have an openly discussed and celebrated culture of learning, and we talk about this every week in staff briefings. It's something that we talk about, and we have done for some time, and we expect every member of staff to commit to their learning and to give something back, encouraging others to join our profession. We actively work with schools, with colleges, with universities, discussing the work we do, and we encourage work placements and provide support to lecturers. There's around 40 of us at Canham's. We have 3 degree apprentices studying at AIU and NTU, and we've also identified 2 more for next year, so there's already a kind of a pipeline. We have a programme of work experience students, and I know many of you will do the same. But the work experience students, we interview them, we select them based on their potential to become apprentices in the future. We also recruit from around the world. We have engineers from Greece, from South Africa, from Spain, Poland, Italy, China, and we want to bring that knowledge from outside of the UK in to develop our knowledge. We try really hard not just to recycle local knowledge, we try to bring knowledge in. We provide career opportunities to local aspiring engineers also. In fact, in January, we have 2 young people joining us from City College, and John is here this evening, who's the T-level representative or organiser, and they're going to be spending time with us each week to learn about our profession. And the hope is that when they complete their T-levels, if they're performing well, they will continue with us as degree apprentices. I am Education Officer for the Institution of Structural Engineers for the Eastern Region, and I lead the annual examination preparation course, preparing aspiring engineers to take their exams. So we do invest significant time in young people, because we haven't got a choice. Our membership in East Anglia compared with the rest of the UK, so the green line is East Anglia. This obviously includes Suffolk and a little bit of Cambridge as well. And you can see that our number is significantly lower across all membership. So that's graduate, student, graduate, associate member and fellow. We are lower in the East than elsewhere in the UK. But when we specifically look at student membership, we're quite a bit lower. But what skews this figure is that a young person that may live in Norwich that's studying in Northumbria will put their address down as Norwich. And even so, we're significantly lower. So low student members. Graduates. We're quite low on graduates. We're very low on graduates under the age of 30, but as soon as it gets past 30, the graduates start to return to Norfolk, probably to get free childcare from grandparents who are living in Norfolk. But it follows the trend from 30 onwards. But under 30, we struggle with graduate members in Norfolk. So this visual is a very simple document which I put together to help my colleagues at Canham Consulting understand the different routes into membership. So technician member, incorporated engineer, chartered engineer and fellow. And there are different routes into it. And there are flexible routes into it. There's not one prescribed route. But the most common route by far is A-level, degree, accredited degree, a period of work experience and chartered. And typically, by the age of 30, a graduate will become chartered. That's the typical route. Of course, what we miss in Norfolk is these 2 things. So the only route into professional status in Norfolk is BTEC, technician engineer or technician membership, further learning, distance learning, and then you kind of work your way through the journey. To become a chartered civil engineer, a period of work experience followed by IPD and a professional review is required. To become a chartered structural engineer, that same process is required, which needs to be followed by a 7-hour grueling exam with a pass rate of about 29%, which is not easy. City College offer 2 courses, both applicable on the pathway, technician apprenticeship level 3 and the HND, which I've touched on. We're working closely with the Joint Board of Moderators now. The JBM link in with all of the different institutions to accredit a course. And they are aware of what we're doing and are keen to support the pathway for civil and structural engineers in Norfolk. I touched on apprenticeships. These are probably the closest universities that offer the degree apprenticeship. Nottingham-Trent, we have young Will goes there, Anglia Ruskin, we have a couple that go there. University of Suffolk, we have sent people there before. We've never sent anybody to London South Bank, but I hear it's quite good. Again, all out of the area. And what does that mean in terms of our carbon footprint? We're sending these people once a week or maybe block release outside of area. Surely there's another way. So I'm going to be quiet now and I'm going to hand over to Steve to talk about building services.
So yeah, I'm here to talk about building services engineering, which is possibly construction's best kept secret in that no one really knows what it is we do 9 to 5. In fact, I've got first-hand experience of this. I grew up in a house with a building service engineer. It was my dad. I had no idea until I was about 16 what it was that he actually did. I thought he was possibly an architect, but all I knew is he had drawings out on the table at weekends, and that was really it for me. So, who are we? Well, as a group of building service engineers, we sort of belong to a professional body called SIBSE, and we are a collective of mechanical engineers. So, mechanical, we deal with ventilation, heating, air conditioning, and importantly the thermal characteristics of buildings, which directly influences how we actually treat the building with those services. We're also electrical engineers, and we focus on lighting design, power distribution and control systems. So everything above your head and concealed within the ceiling that you probably don't think about, but effectively it's all the things that allows us to sit here today looking at a screen. We're also public health engineers. We deal with waste from the building. It's not the most glamorous of the jobs, but it's mostly on paper. That was sort of it. Yeah, there you go. But we also focus on domestic water supply. Thank you. Which is ensuring that water is delivered effectively and to the standard that we can use. We're also fire safety engineers, which, as we know, is a really important role in ensuring our buildings are safe to inhabit. And one of the biggest aspects of that, I guess, is the fire sort of sprinkler systems that we design. And we're also sustainability engineers. We model the buildings that we inhabit using computer software that allows us to predict the future performance of buildings in an ever-changing environment, as well as demonstrating compliance against standards. And we play a role in all levels of construction, from new build and existing, residential and commercial. But importantly, building services are the key to making buildings a healthier place to live and work. So, how do you get there? Well, much like Rob sort of touched on, there's a traditional route, which is, well, unfortunately, building services, that traditional route is more of a find-your-own-way kind of route. We know that you need to get a degree to get that professional membership, and you have to make decisions throughout schooling, your higher education, and you can potentially pick a multiple of degrees that could have transferable skills into building services, and you can sort of find your own route in. But for direct recognition and the ability to undertake the role, there's also the accredited degrees that Rob touched on. But there's sort of quite a few of them, or sorry, there's not very many of them. There's quite a few within the UK as it is. There's also other levels, other ways in, so we can go through the T-level route, which will allow us to go on to higher education with a background of technical knowledge, which is a really great way to go. And there's also the apprenticeship route, so we can find an employer, we can earn valuable skills day to day, supported through additional block learning or study release. And at Ingleton Woods, we currently have 6 apprentices that we send to university, and one undertaking their HNC foundation year, but those 6 apprentices all go to London South Bank. And there's the traditional route where you can aim for university and sort of self-fund. So the end goal, well, it's the individual's choice. Taking a route in from the T-levels onto HNC, it will allow you to gain professional title through engineering technician, which is awarded by the Engineering Council through CIBSE. And from here we can do further study leading on to incorporated engineer with either additional learning or sort of evidence that you are of that standard, and then on to chartered, where you, again, through further learning, and there is the option where if you stay as an engineering technician for long enough and get that experience, then you can move up to chartered level. But the thing that we're missing there is that locally we don't have accredited degree programmes, so any study that we do is through sort of finding that way. And the issue in that is that if we look at the numbers of CIBSE members locally, you can see down to the very end of the graph over there, and whilst it's not the lowest, it is pretty poor in the numbers game. And if we look into why that is, well, every university above us, with the exception of Southern, a bit of an anomaly, but maybe it's just one sort of closer by, either has an accredited degree or a close links to a degree in the region that will allow you to get there. And certainly in my own experience, my path today to get here hasn't been very clear. Every course I've done hasn't led on to another course. And the number of miles I've spent driving to access higher education is pretty embarrassing, given that carbon goal that we're striving to meet today. And again, just reiterating Rob's point, it wasn't until we started a family that we came back to Norwich. And it's a common trend, and it actually drives up the costs because we lack a pool of junior and intermediate engineers in the region. So what does CIBSE see as the opportunities to change this? Well, one of the big ones is that we're looking to increase CIBSE accredited degrees locally. We know that there's a demand on existing courses, and also there's a shortage of other new programmes. One of the programmes that we're keen to sort of push is Building Services Engineering and Sustainability as a single degree, which will offer a very appealing topic to younger generations who to them sustainability aspect has so much meaning. And as a professional body, we're really able to support students at the start of their careers with valuable knowledge, which will really sort of help cement their career path. And apprenticeship programmes, they're really important to be able to take away those unknowns of what's next in study. And again, we're really keen to look at what are sort of typically non-conventional courses and expand on that and move into the younger institutions. And leading on from that, our targets. Well, as CIBSE celebrates its 125 years of being CIBSE, our local focus is to celebrate what it is that we do and effectively generate interest. And so that's one of the CIBSE targets this year. And in generating that interest, the goal really is to inspire the next generation of engineers. And we know that there's this local interest, and particularly with the younger generations, the impact of the built environment is becoming very important to them. And we can grow on that, and we can promote the sexier parts of our industry. We're looking to boost the knowledge of the people in the younger careers and provide them with all the support that they need. And we're looking to share knowledge. One of the best ways to learn is via peer-to-peer learning and through local events and interaction between engineers. We're looking to overcome that issue and striving for the outcome for the greater good rather than for self-success. And lastly, we're looking to engage with others to reduce the climate impact, and engagement with schools, universities and local construction events. So local opportunities. Well, as I mentioned earlier, there's local demand for students to study without travelling too far. And we know that there's been year-on-year growth in T-level provision, and this provides a real opportunity and a pathway of learning with a focus on building services. CIBSE accredited degrees, we've got local opportunities, or we're looking for local opportunities to counter the deficit of engineers and positively drive up skills in the region. CIBSE are available to assist in the development of local pathways, so if anyone is looking to develop a programme, then there's lots of support out there for that to happen. And there's also a real big momentum around CIBSE, which has led to a lot of growth and interest, and I've sort of put a few different numbers out there. I won't go through them, but the numbers look impressive. But it is an insight into the growing importance of the industry, which I believe highlights a real opportunity for us locally. So how do we inspire the next generation? Well, the same reasons as to why it's great to be a building services engineer continue to exist. There's 5 reasons over there, but we can't rely on sort of throwaway publications like that alone. We need to get into schools as STEM ambassadors and really promote this. If I base my decisions on the output of my careers advisor, I'd either be a paramedic or a nursery nurse. And so as the industry, we have a real role that we need to play at this level to ensure that people know their options. Because there really is an opportunity for students to get into an industry where they can make a real difference using the latest technology as well as learning from the ever-ageing engineers. And finally, the point that I'm trying to make is that the work we do has a direct and one of the biggest influences on our sustainable future. And so let's take that and let's make East Anglia the hub of building services.
Hello everybody. So I think you're starting to see a bit of a theme emerging here. It's not an easy route. Accreditation is important, but from my point of view, there's another conversation in that the time to travel outside of our area can be enough to put you off doing it in the first place. So the students may already exist here, but we know that there are areas within Norfolk and Suffolk that are sort of traditionally described as deprived areas. And I've recently worked on a project where having to travel an hour or more to access higher education or even further education is enough to put people off. So for me, that's a good enough reason to have something within Norfolk or build towards that future. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about architecture and architectural technology. Like most businesses that specialise in architecture, there will be a mix of both. And a little bit about why I'm here. So I am a director, I'm an architect, but I also represent the RIBA as the chair of the East region. So I get quite involved in the education programmes as a school ambassador, working alongside the universities that sit within the East region. As a business, we have offices across East Anglia. We're multidisciplinary and we employ around 30 staff. Now what's interesting is because as a multidisciplinary practice, we have a mix of qualified and training people through all levels of their career. So this covers architects, architectural technologists and quantity surveyors. So of the 30 people, we currently have 8 members of staff that are in training across all those disciplines, and every single one of them needs to leave Norfolk and for the most part leave East Anglia in order to gain their accreditation. Again, that's a good enough reason for me to want to be interested in this project. So, as part of my role at RIBA, I've been able to access some of the education statistics. So within architecture, you have ARB prescribed courses and RIBA accredited courses. For the purpose of this, we just assume RIBA accredited courses cover the vast majority of those and give us a good overview as where we're sitting in terms of people and what is available. So across parts 1 and part 2, and I'll explain what they are for anyone that doesn't know very quickly, because obviously John makes me keep moving. We have 17,000 students studying both their part 1 and part 2 in the UK. There's 49 RIBA validated schools in the part 1, 45 doing part 2, and 34 doing the part 3. Interestingly, more than half of these courses are accessed from either Scottish Highers or A-level students, but the next most popular, which is increasing year on year, is level 3 vocational courses. And a couple of statistics looking at the average ages of people at each level of qualification. So what's interesting in the numbers is that most people, students, not all students that undertake their part 1 continue to the full qualification, but approximately 2/3 of them do. But once most people start their part 2, which is your master's course, most of them will continue on to their part 3. a nice little slide for you, just looking at the numbers of comparisons between full-time and part-time students across the UK. So full-time is still the preferred choice, although that is changing. And a couple of graphs looking at how the average ages of qualification for those two particular areas. So sometimes the data is a little bit limited. When we talk about, it's not specifically related to Norfolk, because a lot of it's restricted to the east, because within the east region we don't have a lot in terms of availability. So, looking at architect. To become an architect, the most simplified version, you start your undergraduate degree. That can take you 3 years full-time, or usually 5 years part-time. You're then required to do a minimum of 12 months in practice. You're then allowed to do your master's, so your postgraduate degree. Again, it can be full-time or part-time. Another 12 months in practice before you can start your part 3, which is your professional qualification, at the end of which, if you pass everything, you can register with the ARB and you can apply to become a chartered architect. Gaining in popularity is the apprenticeship route. So what is quite good in architecture, you can have both a level 6 and level 7 apprenticeships. But when you look at the amount of time that it takes, level 6 apprenticeships are your degree, 4 years. They recommend another 12 months working in practice. And then your level 7 will take you from postgraduate degree also to the route where you complete your part 3 and you can enter the chartership world. It takes time. It takes quite a long time. The average architectural student leaves after minimum of 7 years with about £100,000 worth of debt. So if there's anything you can do to reduce that, I think we should be trying. Well, a little snazzy graphic for you.
It makes us great people to talk to at dinner parties, though.
This, I particularly quite like this particular graphic. So what we're interested in is, on the left-hand side, we talk about the student's home. That's the total number of students that are studying, that attend a Part 1 school. So you can see, for example, in London, of all the students studying there, half of them come from London, stay in London, and then the vast majority of them continue to stay in London once you get to your postgraduate degree. East Anglia gets lumped in with the Midlands, so we cover everything from Wales to Lowestoft. There's a much smaller pool of available courses, and it starts to split quite quickly. So if you're living in the East Midlands and East Anglia, at least half of you are going somewhere else, various places. And there's a lot fewer opportunities once you get to the Part 2, which is your postgraduate, of options to actually study anywhere. The more you look at that graphic, the more information it actually tells you. We're moving swiftly on. I'm also, as a woman in the profession, I've always been quite interested in what's sort of trending in terms of, or what is the overall trends in terms of how women are accessed in the profession. And one of the things I really quite like, and what I find quite interesting, is that now the students entering, more than 50% entering the architecture profession, or entering architecture education, are women. If you look at the graph at the bottom, it goes from 2005 all the way to 2020. You can see that you've got around about, we're up from about 38% overall applying to about 54%. And the numbers stay pretty stable, but they're all sort of gradually creeping up, so I think we're getting very close to that 50-50 conversation about equal representation within our particular industry. So, that was a whistle-stop tour of how to become an architect, and we'll talk a little bit about architectural technology. So this is slightly more complicated, or simpler, or a bit of both, in that it's not a simple route to becoming accredited with SciAT. So SciAT's your accrediting body, and within the whole of the east of England, we have one course, and that's at Anglia Ruskin University. The next closest ones are listed is University of East London, London South Bank, and University of Westminster. So one of the things about Anglia Ruskin, they do a lot of these kind of courses across the construction industry, and it currently shows, for the data for 2020, 2021, about 1,275 students studying architecture, building and planning out of a possible 32,000. So I think there's room for growth and maybe a little bit of competition. One of the last things I wanted to talk about a little bit was looking at something that Robert touched on before. When you look at the overall statistics, we've got the total, and I'm particularly interested in the architectural side of that. At the bottom graph, we've got 62,000 people studying architecture, building and planning within the UK, of which 27,000 in total cover architecture. So that's different to the RIBA numbers, but only because this will cover things like interior design, interior architecture and associated courses. But the graph, or the table at the top, so there within the East region there are 6 places where you could potentially study architecture, and there's out of 27,000 total in the country, there's 800 in our region. I don't think that's nearly enough. So, 2 courses, both lead to accreditation. One of the important things I think about the architectural technologist route is, like all the other professions you'll hear about, it requires a lot of professional experience. So once you've got your degree, that is merely the start of the journey before you get to chartership. And some people do, and some people don't, and some of the degrees, I think, across all of these, the undergraduate degrees, do allow you to transfer into other sections of the construction industry. So what do we have? Architecture is slightly different to some of the other professions that we're talking about this evening, in that you can study your Part 1 and your Part 2 in Norwich. The difference is it is quite a small school, and it's not the full route to chartership. Next closest places, if to be an architect you have to have all 3. You could go to Cambridge University, does all 3. University of Suffolk and University of Hertfordshire have a handy little star because those are newly accredited courses, and Anglia Ruskin University also does their Part 1. What this shows is, whilst even in the East region you can study the first part of your degree, the next step doesn't really exist very much, and the last step, there's only one place, which doesn't compare particularly well to the rest of the UK. If you would like to be accredited with SciAT and you want to study as an architectural technologist, you have one option. Just very quickly, this is more for information, I won't go through it all, but these are the options available to apprenticeships. Now, I think they're quite an interesting way to learn. So my route to qualification was I did my degree full-time, and then I did my Part 2 and Part 3 part-time. It took longer, but it meant I gained experience and got to build up the experience of the place that I wanted to live, doing what I wanted to do. The issue was I went to Birmingham once a week, every week, travelling 3.5 hours in each direction for 3 years, not including the Part 3. That, you have to have a certain mindset to want to do that. And I really wished at the time it could have been easier. If somebody had said apprenticeships were available at the time, I think I would have bitten their hand off, because you walk out without the debt, the government's helping support it, and you've got options available. But at the moment, those options are still fairly limited. So when you look at the slides, where can you go? Again, nothing is within Norfolk, and there's barely anything within the East region. And I'm going to now hand it over to John Nelson.
Hopefully it won't be too repetitive what you've just heard, but as you've seen, there's a common theme that's running through a lot of this. So we'll touch on bits. I hope to show you some new areas, but you'll sort of pick up on the flavour. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm John Nelson. I'm a partner at RUA. We are just over 35 strong now in 3 offices across East Anglia, being Norwich, Cambridge and Colchester. We predominantly specialise in project management or cost management, but the bulk of our staff are quantity surveyors and voyage agents, contract managers. And that's kind of how we work. Why are we here today? We actively support people into this industry. I know from a number of my colleagues that I've seen in various different lives over the years that sitting here in this room, we've all come through one form of supported training into this quantity surveying project manager industry. And I think from that, we've felt that as Norfolk, as Colchester, as Cambridge, you've got to slightly grow your own. I think the individuals are out there at the universities, but us as a business, we've had to grab it by the hand, really, lead it and get those individuals out of the schools, out of their A-levels, out of the colleges, into our business and grow them. Because in Norfolk, people like the lifestyle, people like the balance. We get good projects, but actually, if I could go work in London for 3 or 4 years, earn the big bucks, or work on the big skyscraper, then sometimes that's appealing. But actually, that exists here. So we try to generate, grow our own, hopefully retain our own, and develop them into what can be. Now, you'll see some of the similar traits that we come across in terms of how that sits across where we send our students and where we send our staff that we support. So, for me, as I say, we're Quantity Surveyors project managers. We are largely all members of the RICS. We do have a member of the APM route, and I'm conscious that there's members of CIOB that can apply to project management. For the basis of this conversation, I'll talk mostly about the RICS, but I'm by no means ignoring the others. It just makes a similar point in terms of the journey that we're going to go through. So from an RICS perspective, there are kind of two main routes. There's an associate member and a chartered member. And the two are similar in early stages of life, but then slightly different as you advance. So from a chartered member, you become that member, that fellow. As an Norfolk RICS, you become that associate member. And it does open certain other doors in terms of some of the professional groups that exist within the RICS. And I'll come on to that in a second. But in terms of timescales, the ASOC RICS route through the sort of apprentice level or HND level or T-level levels is slightly more accelerated. The chartered route is slightly longer. You need your accredited degree that we're hearing a common theme of today. And quite frankly, if you live in Norfolk, you are going to have to get in a car or get on a train to achieve some of that. So across the RICS, there's 22 chartered pathways, and there's only 13 currently ASOC RIC pathways. And that's largely because of the level of risk or approach to some of these professional pathways and how they teach and how you operate in your professional life. So you'll see through there some of the chartered status are slightly more bespoke areas such as taxation allowance, and some of the more general areas do touch on project management, quantity surveying, where you can be that double-headed sword. In Norfolk, and I'll come on to it in the slight graphic in a moment, you tend to find the common theme at the moment out of the RICS institutions tends to be building surveying, commercial real estate, environmental surveying now is growing quickly, quantity surveying and construction, residential, rural and valuation. And you'll hear that I haven't quite mentioned project management in that little list. So what does that all mean? I think from an RICS perspective, there are 648 members here in Norfolk, of which 759 are currently going through either towards their associate RICS or their chartered status. What you'll see, I think as you go through, so the blue lines, the blue are the members who are qualified or associate members, the oranges are those going through that profession. I think, without shout if you disagree, but I think as you get later on, there are those that have kind of been through the process and never quite completed. The early stages tends to be what we've heard today. It's us as an industry putting you as individuals through that learning curve, so you're registered here in Norwich, or if I'm honest, it's students that aren't here in Norfolk that have registered to their parents' address, and that's showing up in that statistic. So what it says is, we've got a lot of potential in the pipeline, but that pipeline is not necessarily get converted till later life, where we're seeing people come back, and I'll come on to that in a minute. I also thought it was quite interesting to show a statistic around female to male. So you'll see there's only about 16% of our RICS membership is female. If I took our firm as a demographic, we're currently at just shy of 40%, probably perhaps nearer 35% of that is a split in terms of where we sit. So as I said, I touched on the sort of the left-hand side top 7 in Norfolk. This is again all Norfolk related. I've not stretched out into East Anglia, it gives you a feel. These are people by age. So the left-hand side are the general age range. And you can see, as you go through building surveying, commercial property, it gets slightly distorted in quantity surveying, it's a bit different. An environment that the age range starts off very low in the early years, and we then start to peak as people are getting older in their 50s and 60s. And if you actually looked at some of these numbers, it actually says that in a lot of these very busy, very popular, very Norfolk-driven sectors that are fee-earning, staff employing, busy businesses, a lot of that staff are getting older, and a lot of that staff are getting older. And who's going to fill that gap, and who's going to come back to Norwich to be that next generation? Partly unless we grow our own, but actually just attract those people back to the area. I think it's worth saying that project management, and not to single out the project managers because I am conscious of the APM route, that is 26 to 30, and that one is 51 to 60. You're probably in this room somewhere, but the reality is, whether the RSS isn't attractive to project management, we can debate that another day. But what it's saying is, as an institution, we're not doing enough to get those individuals into it. But equally, on the flip side, I am conscious that if you're a building surveyor, a lot of building surveyors do jump to project management, of which this statistic will slightly distort, and that you may be operating in a different profession to what you naturally trained within. So looking at it a slightly different way, but to make a similar point really around the ages, it starts to show, and you won't be able to necessarily make out all the colours, but for the 7 most popular, QSing seems to steadily, consistently grow with age, but the numbers keep coming through. But once you step outside of those graphs, it's very low at the start. You come back generally in your 30s because of that, maybe that childcare or that lifestyle, or you've released your equity in your London mansion and want to come back and buy a farm. I don't know. But the reality is, there's a lot of us getting older in this industry, and what it's saying is we're not getting enough people coming through into profession as chartered qualified members. And if people said to me, does the qualified status hold enough ground now? Well, I still respond to bids, I still respond to frameworks, well, I have to state, are we chartered? How many of my staff are chartered? But that is important. We get graded on that and we are scored on that, so it has a relevance. It has a relevance to my PI, but it has a relevance to the outside world as well. So I think it's not something the RSS are doing wrong, it's about us as an industry getting them back here into Norfolk. So very quickly, because we've got to dive into the details. So from an apprenticeship perspective, like the others, we could touch on the level 3 apprentice here in Norwich. That's the equivalent to A-levels. That starts to get you into the entry degree levels, whether you want to continue your apprenticeship route, and I'll come on to that in a minute, or you want to continue your specific degree accredited route. Depending on where you go, depends on the level of times, but the reality is for us as an industry is either PMs and QSs or QSs alone. Level 3 is available here to a degree of some relevance. Level 4 you're travelling. So you don't have to get very far, so it's A-levels or in the car, and that's really where we are, and I think that's the message to take away today, or train or plane, depending on where you want to work. I think in terms of what that means as a chartered surveyor, now with the apprenticeship route, level 6 is quite recognised, it's now becoming more and more popular. Again, you've got to travel, and I'll come on to that in a minute. The chartered apprenticeship, the chartered route I'll come on to in a second, but the chartered apprenticeship limits you currently in the routes you can then enter your professional institution. So yes, I want to be a building surveyor, I can find that exists. I want to be a quantity surveyor or project manager, that exists. I want to work in property, which is a bit broad, and I've kind of expanded it out a bit more here, then that exists. But actually, for some of the other professions, out of the 22 chartered professions that the RICS offer, I can't get through that on the apprenticeship route. I can't join some of those other institutions through it. So I've got to find another means of degree. I've got to find another means of accreditation. I've got to find another route forward. So even the apprenticeships aren't with me on this one. What does that look like in the short term? And to follow a similar vein of the graphs, you'll see the level 3 and the A-level equivalents, where that means, where that leads to you. The short is, if you want to be an associate member of the RICS, you could probably get there by about 2021. If you want to be chartered, you're probably not going to get there before 24. The RICS degree routes, level 6, and apprenticeships are strongly becoming popular. The accredited routes, which is what we generally send most of our staff on, exist. We have to go to AIU for that. I have a colleague that currently works in our Cambridge office. I wanted to send to the AIU in Peterborough to do exactly the same course in Chelmsford. I can't do that because it's not accredited. and it's not quite there yet. So they are going to Chelmsford when that's probably half an hour from our house. So we're facing those sort of challenges just on the education or the tick boxes, to put it bluntly, to get our individuals through the profession. You can always continue learning. I think the one big thing about quantity surveying, project management, I touched on a little bit with the building surveyors, is that our route to change is probably more flexible than some of the others. So you can come into quantity surveying, you can come into project management with another relevant degree, and that could be town planning, that could be engineering, and as much as we're talking about getting people onto our professions, not converting, you can do that. You can then do the slightly undergraduate accelerated route. Currently that's South Bank or Reading or somewhere remote or in place where you go away for a week, a block to try and do the masters that way. But it does exist, but there's no easy conversion here on our doorstep within a reasonable distance. And that was just to touch on really the same slide that everyone else has, but equally to reiterate the point around where we can go if you want to do the apprenticeship levels and the early entries, and if you want to go down the accredited route and some of the slightly more degree-driven apprenticeships, you're at those 3 locations. And at the moment, and we all talked about carbon, I mean, I can't honestly send one of my guys to London South Bank for a day, to do a course, to come back, expect them to then do 4 days worth of work, have a weekend where they have some sort of social life where they're not doing their college work, and equally be productive in the office and learn what they need them to learn. ARU works. I went through ARU, but there's more localised options. Nottingham-Trent is great, but I face the same travel restrictions. So for us, there's a huge number of people in this industry wanting to come through into this sector, but the travel isn't for everyone. And Adrian touched on it really, but trying to tell someone you may have to be on a train at 5:30, 6 in the morning to get to your college course, and you getting home at 11 o'clock at night, and that's going to Anglia Ruskin, and then you're in the office the next day where you're working hard and earning your salary and trying to have a life. There's a better way to do this. We've got to be smarter, and as an industry, we're just not connected enough here in Norfolk. And that's all from me, and I hand you on to Saul.
Why am I here? Saul Humphrey. I'm disclosure really. ARU been mentioned quite a bit, and I've recently accepted a professorial post down there. I was down there this morning, and it took me 3 hours to get there and 3 hours to get back. It's painful, isn't it? So young people doing it to get a degree and doing it for 4 years, I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore. I'm glad I'm doing it very part-time, very occasionally, because it's too far. But they have, was that 1,200 students doing construction? Yeah, so it's the major player in the East of England doing construction-related subjects, so they're worthy of note. The other things I do are just for disclosure. Sustainability. So this isn't a subject. You're not going to go off and do sustainable construction rather than unsustainable construction or engineering or architecture. But my ask today is that we think about sustainability in everything we do. Every course we think about running, if we're going to do something in Norfolk or we're going to do something in Suffolk, let's have a sustainable line through it. Let's make that a consistent theme, because it's the only way to go. My slides, I've got too many slides, but I'll do them quickly. Why listen to me? Prepare for tomorrow. Construction, challenges, answers, and ambition in a summary. My background, just to give me a little bit of a platform to stand on. I'm taller than John, but not as tall as Paul, so I need a little bit of a boost. I think I also suffer from some kind of imposter syndrome, so I have to get lots of letters after my name to cover up the fact that I'm pretty useless, really. I was a long while at Carter's. I wasn't so long at Morgan Sindall. I do a bit for building growth, and Nadine and Helen here, a shout out on building growth. Just to contextualise that, a lot of what happens with skills in the region in construction, building growth's been the voice of that, and Helen, for 6 years, you've chaired that division, so thank you very much. And that's strategically how we link back to New Anglia LEP, and we communicate our needs, our desires, and what we're doing. But clearly we can do more. I don't know why that's on there, really. In life, you meet a lot of people, don't you? Some of whom influence you and shape you, and you want to emulate, and some you never want to meet again. That was kind of the purpose of the slide, really. But you do learn something from everyone, and I hope we'll all take something away from today, from each person we've heard from. Jobs I'm working on at the moment, I'm not going to go through them in detail, but they've got something in common, and that's they're all ultra sustainable. Whether it's the highest EPC rating in a house ever built in Norfolk, whether it's a BREEAM Outstanding, whether it's a paragraph 131 Earth Bunded house with a SAP rating which is off the scale, another BREEAM Outstanding Care Village, and another one BREEAM Outstanding, and another one BREEAM Outstanding, which is aiming to be the lowest embodied carbon building built in the UK, or one that John knows a bit about at Hethel, John Nelson that is, the most sustainable place, urban settlement in the UK, and then another one to grow from that at Hethel. So one at Lewis is that, and one at Hethel's next in Norfolk if it gets consented. Thought for the day, Winston Churchill, he's not here tonight, but if he was, he would have said, we shape our buildings, thereafter they shape us. We could flip that and say we shape our people, we shape our staff, we shape our trainees, and thereafter they shape us. So I think we should remember that as well. We've got a responsibility to shape them the right way. Rob gave you some stats earlier, so I don't want to repeat them, but they're worth remembering. I think one of them was that GDP, construction's impact on GDP was about 7%, employment was about 10%. What's the point of saying that? We're a big part of the economy. We're a big part of what happens, but we very rarely get the front page news. We haven't got the image, we haven't got the voice. For some reason, it's not recognised that 10% of all employees are construction related. Why is that? We've got an image problem. That's not me, that's Mark Farmer, on the image problem. He did the report. He did his report on construction and called it modernise or die. And I think that's pretty striking, pretty damning. And why? Because we do have low productivity, low predictability, too much fragmentation, a bit dysfunctional, poor image. Crikey, we've got a lot to do to make it better. So I think not only do we want to have a degree course locally, we want a really good degree course locally, and we want people in the room to help shape it. I want us to make sure it's also delivering a sustainable curriculum on the way through, because that's what we ought to be doing. Why? We've got an energy crisis, you know that. Although I hear today, we've got nuclear fusion coming, haven't we? We're all going to have clean, perfect power forevermore, but not immediately. We've got a housing crisis. How many headlines have we seen about the housing crisis? We've heard loads about the skills crisis, so I'm not going to repeat that slide. But the fact that you can't get a degree in construction in Norfolk or Suffolk is striking. And this demographic time bomb, these people retiring, that red bubble up there, is the drop-off point. So construction beyond the professions, the average age of a steel fixer is 57, all that kind of thing. Crikey. And we've got Sizewell coming, going back to energy. Sizewell, I think, is going to have 10,000 people on site every day. It's going to last over 10 years. Where are those 10,000 people coming from? And of course, we've got a carbon and climate crisis. I don't want to go through them either, because I think we know enough about it to know it's significant, and we're such a major part of this. So construction, we're roughly 38 to 40% of all carbon emissions comes from the built environment. You've heard that before, but many of you have heard Ian Gillespie speak much more eloquently than me in this room about the same subject. But we have to focus on that. We have to recognise that we're a big part of the problem, but we can be a massive part of the solution. So what's the industry doing to recognise this? Well, we do another report, don't we? Whenever we've got a problem, when it's not going very well, we'll commission someone to write a report. So we've got some wonderful reports. Guess what? Yeah, you know. The region, what are we doing strategically in Norfolk, Suffolk, east of England? We have lots of committees and quangos and EDAs and LEPs and devolution deals, and I guess we'll do some more reports. But I don't know if we'll do enough to make it actually change. But we all have a chance to shape our own education and to know what we know from what we read and what we see and what we hear. So I'd urge us all to read the right stuff, understand what's going on in the world, and apply it. So my answer, I've already said how much of the carbon comes from the construction sector. There's 17 SDGs, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Construction can answer 9 of them. The way we design, we engineer, we deal with the services. This building today, the concrete, the rebar, the services, the embodied carbons make up about 10% of the emissions that are going out there. The operational carbon is 28%. So that's a 38% statistic. Some people say it's 39, some say 40, but it's that sort of order. As we get the energy grid to be greener as we're using renewable energy more and more, wind turbines, PV. The operational carbon will drop, but the embodied carbon is going to remain. And that's huge. So Ed's fact, it's all of our facts. We know that if cement was a country, it would be the third biggest polluter in the world. If steel was a country, it would be fifth. So look at the building, isn't it lovely? Look at the concrete, look at the rebar, look at the steel that's holding it up. Can we do it more efficiently? Can we do a recycled aggregate? Can we do it with less? Can we do it in timber? Can we do it in CLT? Can we do it in glue down? You're looking at me about fire, aren't you? But I know, but we have to find a better way. So it's incumbent on us to shape that, to influence it, and get involved. So, my summary, let's make sure we shape our buildings the right way. Let's educate our people the right way. I'm relisting my little practice as a B Corp. It's been shortlisted for a Queen's Award. Offset your carbon, what you've got left, offset it for goodness sake. Support the Part Z amendment, so deal with embodied carbon. Support the Future Home Standard. Design buildings to BREEAM standards. BREEAM outstanding, aim high, get there. Do it right and try and use materials that grow rather than we have to dig them up. And let's teach our people how to do that. Let's infuse them, teach them locally and sustainably, and don't send them in cars to do long journeys to the movies. Thank you.
I'm going to be talking about the construction management pathway. And for those who know me, you'll know I'm not a construction manager. I'm a construction director. But I am supported today by two colleagues, Ed and James, and they're going to come and talk about their pathway that they've recently completed. And I'm just going to talk about us initially, a bit about our business, about our training strategy, and also give a bit of an overview of the CIOB pathway, which is the general pathway that I think most construction managers take. So firstly, a bit about us at a glance. So we've been about for 100 years, so 1921 we started. We employ over 800 employees across our region, and so we have a sizable amount of staff. We deliver approximately 300 million turnover in the eastern region, and that's all construction related projects, and that's delivered out of 12 offices, and so those offices are all over the eastern region. And at the bottom there, for 54 years we've had our RG Carter Academy in existence, and that's supported the local community, it supported the next generation, and it's supported the growth of our business. And it's been really important that we have really spent the time developing our local community and their skills. And I think it's also not just supported us as a business, it's supported our supply chain and it's supported our competitors. And then there's a number here, and our staff end up working for Morgan Stindl and the others. And so there is that has really benefited our region. Every year we take on approximately 10 apprentices. This year we've taken on 14. We've got a bit of a smaller year than the previous 2 years. And currently we've got 62 apprentices in our business, and they're all going through apprenticeship degrees. That's something that we've really pushed forward on. And like a lot of people have already said, we've used NTU in the past, we've used ARC in the past, and we made a bit of a step change 2 years ago where we started to use USEM, and we do distance learning. And the guys will talk about a bit more about the pathway that they're following on that. So, construction management pathway. There's a number of pathways that you could choose, and professional bodies, and I guess the end game for every professional person is to have an accreditation. As I've suggested there's lots, and I know that we've seen various others as well. There's CABE, RICS, and there's CIOB. And I think generally for construction management, CIOB is a choice. There's, I think, 45,000 members across the UK, CIOB, and they cover a real broad spectrum of different job roles, and you can't actually see that very well on here, but they cover most, and obviously construction management is the main one. So the CIOB, or the Chartered Institute of Building, so they have a number of pathways like all the others. The first one is a skills development pathway, and so that's typically a 2-year-ish approx period, And that first part of the pathway, you have to complete an accredited degree again. And then after that, you can go on and do your 2 years where you go through an evidence learning approach to demonstrate competencies. The other way is a knowledge development pathway. And with that, you can start with a non-construction related degree. That takes a bit longer, 3 years, and you as part of that process, you have to undertake a graduate conversion certificate, and that gives you the skills that you probably haven't got through undertaking that construction-related degree. There's also the degree apprenticeship degree pathway, which my two colleagues are undertaking, and so the USEM, for example, their course has been sort of designed with CIOB input, and so that's made. So that's to ensure that the competencies are delivered through the part of the course delivery. And so actually at the end of their degree, you could be chartered within 6 months to a year. And so that actually speeds up the whole process. And then obviously there's lots of other pathways where if you don't have a degree but you have lots and lots of experience, you can then obviously follow that. So this leads on to me handing over to Ed and James. And so they're going to talk a bit about their recent experience in construction management, and then they're going to talk to you in a little bit more detail about what they see as the opportunities of a local trade and delivery.
Yeah, so I'm James.
I'm Ed.
So just to start, just about our sort of journey really. So at high school we both interested in construction. Didn't really know what we wanted to do though. There was a high emphasis on going to A levels, but there wasn't really anything at A level that was suitable for what we wanted to do. So and to be honest with you as well, both of us found that degree sort of apprenticeships we didn't know anything about basically. So knowing that there wasn't really anything that we wanted to do there, we went to City College.
Yeah, so like James said, we were both interested in construction, but didn't really have any idea of what pathway we wanted to. So going back to Rob's point, I went to a careers advisor. I said I wanted to be in construction. They said, right, so you need to go on a multi-skills course and be a plumber or a bricklayer. I was like, well, I knew in my head that I knew there was other options available, but it was clear to me that they didn't really know that. So I attended the City College open day where they were really helpful and they directed me down the level 3 extended diploma route, which myself and James both done. It's a 2-year course, which was a full-time course, but it was 2.5 days a week. And it's not a sales pitch for City College, but they've got a lot of pathways into the industry, so they connected myself and James with multiple main contractors, but mainly IG Carter and LSI Architects, which gave us work experience while learning. So again, that was a big thing for us to get an understanding of what pathway we wanted to go through in the industry, if it was project management, building surveying. But the thing with the level 3 course is it gave us a overview of all opportunities in the industry, rather than being just honed in on one specific, which gave then me and James gave us the knowledge to then make a decision on what we want to do after our 2-year course.
Yeah, so that's then obviously where our employment started with RG Carter. So based on what we'd done at City College, we got offered contracts of employment with RG Carter, and that was where we then started on the University College of Estate Management course, which was a 4-year BSc Honours degree in construction management. That was done on day release and funded through Carter's, which obviously has obvious benefits of what you learn, etc. Working alongside the staff and as part of a team delivering projects, and it was done through distance learning, so we didn't actually have to travel ourselves. We done it on an online portal, which was okay, but you don't get like the face-to-face interactions, which we'll come on to in a minute. But and then what we're now going through is the CIOB accreditation, which is part of the endpoint assessment basically, which is then that 6-month to year period.
I think just in summary to that, so you can see high schools, really important we get in there and talk to high schools, make sure the careers advisors understand what the opportunities are in construction. City College Norwich, really important to us as a business. You can see down on the left there's a lovely picture. We just delivered Digitech Factory, and the amount of our staff that had all, the delivery staff had actually gone to City College at one point in their life and their career. So that's really important. And then from a degree perspective, it's really important that there's a degree opportunity delivered locally, but also that it's going to have the right level at the credits to be able to then get to the point where you need to go. So that's just something of that page.
While me and James are from Norwich and stayed in Norwich as such, our degree was outsourced and RG Carter invested their money elsewhere in USEM. But from our point of view, while we have got a degree and we've come out with a degree, it certainly wasn't a smooth ride for neither of us, and we certainly didn't get probably the full benefit of what we could have done if it was an in-person degree. So throughout the 4 years, if it wasn't for James, I wouldn't have met another student who'd done my course. We attended our graduation and felt like we were kind of great gate crashing a party because we've never seen anyone before, and it felt like we were just doing a course sort of thing. So from my point of view especially, I reading a book on the screen and attending a virtual lecture which I couldn't attend live because I was in a client meeting or I was busy. It wasn't my way of learning. Like I say, me and James had not arguments, but we had constructive discussions on Teams, or especially during COVID. Like I say, if it wasn't for James, it would certainly be very isolated. And there was no personal interaction with tutors because they do an hour live slot every week, and if you're busy, or which we mostly are because we were always on live projects, you'd have to watch it one evening, and if you asked a question, it was always wait 2 or 3 days for a response, which I'm not going to slag USEM off because it's difficult. They've got students from all over the world, but it's not my way of learning. So a locally sourced degree would certainly give you interact with students and peers. It would also reduce the carbon output by travelling. If it wasn't for USEM, we would have to go elsewhere. And a more structured delivery of course content, because with a distant learning course, while we had a set day, it was always we could miss it. If we had a locally sourced degree, it would be structured. You'd have to go on that set day to go see your tutors or whoever it may be.
Yeah, and I think probably the last sort of few bullet points on there all sort of link into each other. So there's obviously like all the businesses locally that will give them all the opportunity to sort of get more involved with the courses. You can actually go to the university if we have a local course and deliver a lecture, or there could be site visits to the sites we're working on to try and encourage people to stay, to show them sort of what is going on in the area. And then there's the other thing, obviously we spoke about people leaving the area. By doing a course in the area, will probably attract people in, so it will be bringing in some of the sort of external talent back into Norfolk.
So what does the future look like? Thanks for bearing with us so far. Coming towards the end now, and then we'll have some questions at the end. So you've heard from different professions, and hopefully you're now all a little bit more informed about what it takes to become a construction professional in the different disciplines, and you're aware of the challenges that we all face. So we're all working together under the banner of Construction East, and this is actually a banner which the UEA have suggested to us. It's very early days, okay, but our objective is to provide a voice for construction firms in terms of training and professional development, to provide a link between business and education, influence appropriate construction education in Norfolk and Suffolk, and provide a point of contact for careers advisors for schools, for teachers and for students. So we want to provide every individual who has an interest in construction with the right advice so they understand the different pathways that are open to them. If they want to study outside of Norfolk, that's to be encouraged, but maintain a link with that individual so that they can come back to Norfolk and have a successful career within our area. It will take some time to evolve. We are going to need some funding, and we've made some tentative inquiries on how we can attract some funding to make this happen. And we're going to need lots of support from everybody working in our sector in Norfolk and Suffolk. But we do feel that there's an appetite for it. and gauging the feedback from this evening, I think that's right. So we don't want the one on the left where we recycle knowledge and we let it all go out. We still will recycle some, and there will still be knowledge that leaves, but there'll be people that come back into the area. We want youngsters from Exeter, from Liverpool, from Nottingham, from Leeds, wanting to come and study and live and work in Norfolk. If we do that, we really build the built environment in our area. Of course, it's not just young people. Construction East will provide support to mature students who have a desire to work in construction, change careers, learn again. Is it really practical for a mature student, perhaps a parent with family commitments who'd like to become a chartered surveyor, for example, to study in Chelmsford once a week? It's not really practical. It's not going to happen. So we're putting people off. And this individual could be just a fantastic building surveyor or quantity surveyor that the pathway is just not there for them. So we're in early stages of discussion with several institutions and educators. There is a shared commitment to making improvements, to working together, and I'm delighted that City College, East Coast College and UEA are here this evening to listen and learn about the needs of the industry and how we can all work together. So what is our objective? So our objective is for these courses to be delivered in Norfolk, both as degree apprentice courses, part-time study and full-time study. It will take time, okay, but there is an appetite in this room and across our sector in Norfolk and Suffolk. One thing's for sure, we can't expect educators to provide these courses without our help. We need to offer our time and support to colleges, universities to deliver the courses. And in the same way that we find recruitment really, really difficult, universities find recruitment lecturers very challenging. The skills shortage applies equally in the education sector as it does in the working sector. Saul lectures at ARVU, as he mentioned earlier. I provide support to Nottingham Trent, and I'm sure that many of you deliver some lecturing or support to schools and colleges. But we need to do more of this, and we need to coordinate our approach so that we collectively can provide more support to our educators. So, short term, what does it look like for us as businesses? What does the next 12 months look like? So we're going to be developing Construction East. We're going to be sharing our progress with you all so you understand what we're doing. And we're going to provide a bit more clarity about the role it will play and the support that we will need. We're going to be looking at funding and how we can improve this. Our idea is that we have a hub, and that hub will need funding, and it will need to be resourced. We're going to continue to link with educators. It doesn't help you all right now, okay? It's going to take some time. It doesn't help you right now with recruitment. So I would recommend that you get to know a university, and I touched on this earlier. Get to know a university that offers the accredited degree that works for your practice, your business. Attend that careers day, get to know the graduates, and you'll find that graduates will want to come and work for you from outside of the region. Look outside of the region for staff, bring talent in from outside of Norfolk, and I know many of you do that already. You'll find that it energises your business and provides a fresh approach to the way that you approach a project. And invest your time with schools, colleges, universities, and give something back. Medium term, we're going to form this hub, and we're going to coordinate with other professionals to support the educators. And we'll keep you informed all the way through. And our long-term plan, as I've mentioned, we want construction degree courses delivered in Norfolk. There's a clear pathway for every child, mature student, to develop a career in construction, and we're going to coordinate all of that with educators and with business to build a skill base in Norfolk to become a training hub for construction professionals so that we find recruitment so much easier. The knowledge base in Norfolk grows, the construction knowledge base grows, our built environment benefits and our businesses benefit, and we have a pipeline of talent on our doorstep. This is where we need to get to. So thank you for all listening. I hope you found it interesting. There will be a SurveyMonkey link sent to you all in the next couple of days with some questions. I'd really encourage you to answer those and send them to your colleagues that aren't here this evening. We need data. We need information from all employers, all businesses in Norfolk, and from that data it helps us to influence change and work with the educators.